It's still rolling. There you go.
No, we start now. Welcome, everybody, our viewers, to the May 4th meeting of the regular meeting of the Harbor Advisory Board being held here in Veterans Hall in Morro Bay. We can call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, although our chair is absent this evening, Mr. Reisner. We do expect him back next month. If we can begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. And Neil, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we have advisory board announcements. Let's see, Mr. LaFay?
Yes, I do have an announcement. The Friends of the Morro Bay Harbor Department is very pleased and excited to announce that we have brought back the fireworks to the city of Morro Bay July 4th. So we need some help. We need some volunteers. We need some donations. But we will be doing it, and we're going to put it off. And there will be future announcements as we get a little bit more into it. There's been a lot of concern that the tourists and the locals here have missed it. And if you Google fireworks and you go to the fireworks City of Morro Bay, it says in Google, don't go to Morro Bay, go to Cayucos or Pismo for fireworks. So pretty much the Embarcadero is shut down after 4 o'clock on 4th of July. And a lot of the merchants, which are leaseholders of the Harbor Department, have expressed a desire to bring them back. And so we've had a meeting, and we're going to bring them back. So thank you very much. If you want some more information, go to our website, www.friendsofthemorrobayharbordepartment.com. We'll have a web page together, and you'll hear more information in the next week or so. Thank you.
That is great news. Okay. Mr. McLeish? No. Mr. Maloney?
No.
Mr. Dowdy?
No.
And Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, I just wanted to report that there's still crab coming into Morro Bay, so it should be available in town here, right off the boat, in one of the fish markets here. Also, there's a lot of live fish being caught. Looks really good right now, and there's black cod coming in also. So it looks there's quite a bit going on fish-wise.
That is also good news. Next on our agenda is public comment. If anybody in the audience would like to...
That's you.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Twist. I come as a business owner on the Embarcadero. I have the paddleboard company. Also, I'm the secretary on the Chamber of Commerce here in Morro Bay and a resident. So I'm coming because I know you guys are doing your budget, and I'm just urging you, if it's not too late, to put some money towards the infrastructure on the Embarcadero. The bathrooms, I've been here before. I know, you know, they're despicable. The trash is really a big problem, especially on 3-day weekends and during events. Particularly Sundays, they're overflowing. The trash cans themselves are a lot of times open, so our seagull friends like to wreak havoc on any leftovers they can find, which just really trashes our city, no pun intended. It's, I just see tourism working really hard, the city working really hard to promote this beautiful space that we have. I have a recreational business. I try to offer fun things to do. We have, it's very scenic. And when we have litter from the birds and no room for tourists or people to put their trash, and bathrooms that are subpar, really, It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing as a vendor down on the Embarcadero, hearing their comments. I manage a public bathroom that's on a fairly new site, so I'm known as one of the cleanest bathrooms, which is not something I really am proud of necessarily, because I get lines of traffic. But there's a problem, huge problem here. I know it's a bigger deal than just slapping paint on it, but there perhaps is some simple solutions we could do: painting, upgrading the fixtures and whatnot, the doors, the warped wood paneling, such as that. So that's my plea. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sandy. That will close public comment. We come to the consent calendar. You have all read the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes from the last meeting? Jean?
I have a couple of questions on the minutes there. Let me scroll down here. One had to do with concessionaire truck out on the Embarcadero, or out at the Rock. I thought we said that only during special events, and I don't see that. And then further on down, when we talk about city staff explored robust grant opportunities, revised city state park marina, and then expanding the current mooring field for potential increase in revenue. I don't remember us talking about adding more moorings, but perhaps I'm wrong. We talked about making it more efficient, but I don't remember talking about adding more moorings. So that's just my questions. So I'm asking the board if they concur or not.
Yeah, when that was my thing that I brought up. I was just to look at reorganizing with the idea of possibly adding, but I don't know.
Okay.
If, or it was in effect to generate more revenue. So if we could somehow, find that the map would allow us to, or a new map would allow us to lay more moorings.
That's fine. I just couldn't remember it.
And then as far as the comment about the food truck, I think that even though it might not be reflected in the minutes, it was reflected if you look on this agenda that it
Right.
made it on. At the end it says for special events only. So
Right.
I assume even if I'm not sure where on the minutes you're referring to. Do you know which bullet that was? C?
The food truck was under D.
D.
D is in David.
About the fourth one down under D.
Let me see it. Well, my
But I
only
see
comment
it's
is
under our
that
work plan later on. so
yeah,
I wanna
and it
make
made it
sure
in with the right language, so I assume.
Okay, those are only my comments.
Anybody else? I do have one comment. I think it's a misspelling on page 1 under have member Dowdy. He concurs, he doesn't conquer. And also on page 4, goal 3, D, develop and recommend next steps from reviewed responses, which may include feasibility, not a feasible study, but a feasibility study, I think was the intent.
Okay, we've spotted those. Thank you.
Okay. Any other corrections? May we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. All right, we can get to business items now, and on B1, Harbor Status Report.
Thank you and good evening, Vice Chairperson Lind, for that. So another month has gone by. Harbor Patrol statistics, 6 emergency responses and 100 calls for service over the last approximately 30 days. 30 assist the other agencies, 16 enforcement contacts, and 9 weather hazards, probably wind. I would guess at this time of the year, gale. I think we've had a lot of gale advisories. April 1st, opening day of rockfish season was pretty darn busy.
I think our total count was about 75 boats in the ramp. It's about a 40 parking space ramp, so we had a little bit of overflow in there, which is always good to see. We were called out to a vessel dead in the water 2 miles west of the rock, ended without incident, towed it back to the State Park Marina, later dispatched with our partner agencies down to Montana de Oro for a surf rescue of a kayaker that got washed into the rocks, ended up being rescued from land by the land folks that came from Los Osos, Cal Fire and such. But just reminder to be careful out there in the water. That one did end well, but again, can be a treacherous place to be, so watch your weather and surf forecasts and plan accordingly. On April 4th, many county agencies came down to the Coast Guard station outside where we honored Coast Guard Chief Nillis for his promotion from regular old chief to senior chief. So he made a promotion. He will be staying here for hopefully the remainder of his term. He's got about 2 years left. So we congratulate Chief Nillis on that promotion. It's good to see him move up the ranks. On April 11th, the Fire Department and Harbor Patrol participated in a multi-agency water rescue training drill. We do this every year in various locations. This year it was back out at the Abalone Farm out in Cayucas. We'd hoped to bring in a helicopter, usually bring in either a CHP helicopter to do some picks or the Coast Guard helicopter, but I think it was too foggy that day, so we just ended up doing land and water rescue drills out at the remote location out there, and the Ab Farm's always great to help us out there as well. All in all, April was a pretty busy month with all the wind and rockfish season opening. A lot of folks out in the water. Still had some big swell. Had some kiteboarders out there losing control and crashing. A lot of kayaker situations. So just, again, a reminder, folks, to pay attention to the weather and waves and forecasts and know what's going on out there. On the harbor dredging front, if you haven't noticed, you need to go outside because the dredge ship Buquina is out on the bay, dredging mostly the harbor entrance. They got here on this past Monday, and we'll be here for about 28 days, 29 days of dredging, primarily the harbor entrance and just inside the harbor near the inner groin jetty. All the channel markers for all you boaters and folks out there on the water, all the red side channel markers from the entrance on into about the North T-pier are missing. They've been pulled out to allow the dredge to maneuver and get in and do the dredging. So favor the green side of the channel or call the dredge or Harbor Patrol or Coast Guard if you've got any questions, if you wonder which side to pass on and wonder where the channel is, because they're cutting and making deeper water as they go, but they're still shoaling out there. Previous dredging pipeline project, which began back in January, is still here. Most of that equipment is parked now. The OTNA design build of the company that's here are pretty much in hibernation for a while. They needed to be completely out of the way for the Aquina to be here, so they're shut down. They've got things parked off to the side. We're still maneuvering things around and trying to get space freed back up, but they'll be gone and not dredging. Equipment will be here, but they're not going to be dredging for about a month until June. The dredge is parked down kind of off the in at Morro Bay zone. Tidelands Park down at the corner down there. Their yard out at the rock is still out there, their lay yard. We're trying to get that consolidated down a little smaller. And they've got pipeline still laid on the ocean floor. It's on the bottom through the harbor. They've got channel or buoys marking where it is, but it goes out to about the harbor entrance where it terminates. And so when they come back, hopefully in June, they'll be able to hook back up to it and continue dredging. We'll see how that goes. Recent City Council activity on October 4th. City Council discussed 2017-18 goals and objectives. That was with on standard goals and objectives. They went through and had a discussion on the city's overall goals and objectives. And then on the 11th, they had a special council meeting to meet with the chair of all the city's various boards and commissions, including our chairman, Ron Reisner. Had a good session with him, and council met and reviewed our list of goals and work plan objectives and did some modifications to those. The one thing missing from those that we'll be going over later tonight is the quarters of implementation. In other words, sort of the timeline that we foresee implementing those objectives. So those on our staff report for tonight for item C7, so you'll see those a little later. Also at the April 11th meeting, the council reviewed the remaining 2 proposals on 833 Embarcadero, which is the off-the-hook lease site, which was out to RFP last year, or maybe even the year before, when we originally put it out. Request for proposals, council, we originally had 3 responses to that RFP. The council directed those respondents to come back with some revised plans and drawings because they weren't compliant with the city's local coastal plan and master plan. They brought those back. 2 of them came back. 1 elected not to come back. So on April 11th, those 2 were heard, and council tentatively approved the RFP for the proposal from TLC Family Enterprises, which is operated by Sharice Hansen, who has Under the Sea Gallery, a current tenant there. And we're going to be working with her over the next few weeks to more fully develop her proposal and look at financials and other aspects of her proposal and bring it back to City Council for approval of consent to landowner at a future meeting. So hopefully that process will start moving forward again as well. And then at their April 25th meeting, the council approved a webcam license agreement again with Surfline, Inc. As you know, Surfline's surf cams have been here for 2-3 years now. They've added a couple new cameras. They've bought up a lot of the cameras along the coast that were out there up in Cayucas and everywhere. And so they've got an additional camera they put in down at the launch ramp. And so we've got some additional revenues from that as well. New banner ad, get some good things in return from them besides just rent. We get banner ads and timeout, and we can actually control the camera in time of emergency. We can log in and control their cameras, so it's a good effort. Plus, there's rewinds that we can go after. We've had a couple incidents so far in the bay where we've been able to go back and look at the Surfline cam and try and find footage of and kind of forensically recreate what happened. So all in all, that was a good thing to renew. On the fishing front, I think Jeremiah pretty well covered that. I believe commercial salmon opened up on May 1. I think it's closed north of Horse Mountain. The northern fisheries closed down due to low returns on the Klamath run. They're looking at potentially forecasting, so everything will be down here if there is any, but haven't really heard of any rumors of any fish being caught.
I had a report this morning that there was 4 fish delivered to Morro Bay Seafood. So that's not a very good report for salmon.
Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. Just because we got all the creeks flowing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good this year. It may be a few years out. Past events that have occurred, Morro Bay Natural Estuary Program had the State of the Bay events throughout the month of April. From what I understand, pretty well attended, great events, good informational items they provide as always. April 10th to 14th was Spring Cleanup Week, and I believe the weekend before that was the citywide garage sale effort. But Spring Cleanup Week was where you can put out anything you really need to get rid of, big, large, bulky stuff, and City Garbage Service comes and cleans it up. April 16th were the Easter sunrise services at the Rock, very well attended. A little crowded on parking because we have the dredged yard taking up a good amount of the real estate down there, but the dredge folks and the Easter sunrise folks, I think, worked pretty well together to work around the yard and make as much space available as they could. April 23rd was the Blessing of the Fleet down here on the waterfront. Another great event that we have every year, and thanks to all the folks that come out and take care of that, including the Commercial Fishermen's Organization. And last weekend, April 29th and 30th, was Kite Festival. Had it been a few days earlier, it might have been a little scary with the amount of wind we had, but I think Saturday and Sunday laid down nicely, and it was a great event. Lots of people out there with that. Upcoming events this weekend, you've probably seen on trailers and a lot of cool old cars driving around already, is the Cruise and Morro Bay Car Show. Starts out, I think, Friday evening with a little drive around town, then Saturday, Sunday has the car show itself, so another great event to look for. May 13th, Miracle Mile for Kids, 10K run. That's the run that starts at the Rock, ends up down at Cayucas, so look for that, and you can look at that online and join up on that if you want to. May 16th, Morro Bay is a stage finish for the Amgen bicycle race, Tour of California bicycle race. Pretty big deal. Last year we were a start leg, which is not quite as big a deal, I guess, as a finish. It's certainly more simple because everybody starts at once, and while it's a lot of activity going on and there's a quick flurry in the morning until they're all gone, finish is a little different because they come in a little more staggered, so we'll be looking to facilitate that and see that when it comes in on the 16th. Should be a great event. And May 20th, the week of May 20th is National Safe Boating Week. On the 20th itself, and there's a flyer up, we have our own Morro Bay Safe Boating Day. We're joining with the Coast Guard Station Morro Bay, Coast Guard Auxiliary, Sheriff's Department, and other agencies to provide public with valuable safe boating and other information. We'll have vendor demos and displays, life jacket trade-in, vessel safety checks, other stuff. Free event, we're holding at the North T Pier, adjacent to our harbor offices and Coast Guard offices, so look for that from 10 to 2 on May 20th. The chart at the bottom, pending HAB recommendations. I don't think we have any new changes on there. I'm just looking that over real quick. No, I don't think there's anything new to change on there. All that's still pending. And with that, any questions, concerns?
I had one question about the run for the Miracle Miles. I've never participated in it, so I'm not too familiar with it. But does it always start in Morro Bay and end in Cayucas, or has it ever switched and ended here in Morro Bay? Just curious.
I don't know that it ever has.
At the end? I'm just thinking if it's an event, starting here, ending there, if it ever would benefit us more to
Flop
have it
around
flip and
They do
end
have
here.
booths and stuff down at the
Okay.
other end.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. One on National Safe Boating Week. I remember, quite a few years ago, maybe 10 or 12, they actually had out on the T-Pier, they invited boaters to bring in their outdated flares of various kinds, and we got to set them off, actually handle them, light them, and see what it was like. And I personally found that a really valuable experience. I'd been boating for a long time and always carried flares, but I had never actually handled one. And so it was really informative, and I would really like to see that done again. I would like to repeat that experience myself. I'm sure there are changes in some of those flares that they would handle differently. There's those kind too, but it was the handheld ones that are really turned out to be scary, especially on a wooden boat.
Yeah, some of those flares are pretty big and pretty
Yeah.
powerful. I don't know that's on the list of things to do, but I will check with our coordinator folks, and that's a good point. We do take flares as turn-ins when people have them expired. I mean, public service announcement, your flare expires, don't get rid of it. Keep a couple extra on board, because if you really do need one, the flares do last. I'm not encouraging people to let their flares expire and don't replace them. I mean, they expire and they have you replace them for a reason, but keep your old ones, keep a good number of your old ones in hand in case you really do need them, because 3 flares is not very many. You can use those up in a hurry, so it's always a good idea to have extras. But we do take the old ones, and those are typically the ones we fire off. And you're right, I've shot off some pretty old and funky ones over the years. And
As I remember, over
it can be scary.
50-75% of those outdated flares actually were still active.
Yeah. So that's a good point. We'll bring that and see if that's a possibility of adding that back on, or adding that on.
Secondly, what is the life jacket trade-in?
Bring an old life jacket, an old used beat-up one that really isn't too serviceable anymore, and we've got sponsors that provide new ones and provide you with a new one.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. That's not the end of my comments. On harbor dredging, I hear the anchorage is closed as long as the pipe dredging is there. Is that true? There is no place for boats to anchor? Should they come in and not want to pay the fees for berthing at?
The anchorage area is not closed. It is impacted by, there's a fair amount of pipeline they've got stored in there. They've got 2 kind of pontoon barges with connections on them that the pipes connect to, and they got 6 or 7 lengths of probably 1,000 feet pipe, or maybe 700,000 foot of pipe. That is impacting the space available in the anchorage area. It's not closed in the anchorage area. It's currently the barges are a little too close to each other, so when the wind blows, they bow out. The pipeline bows out, and we're trying to get them to tighten that up and anchor it a little better so it doesn't impact the anchorage area as much. But the anchorage area is not closed, but it is definitely restricted in its space.
People, if they came in and were not familiar with the bay, would have a very hard time trying to figure out where they could safely anchor.
We're having to spend a little more time when folks call and ask about the anchorage. It's usually pretty easy. North of the permanently moored boats and out of the channel. Well, now you've got another hazard in there to worry about. So.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
I do have a couple more things I want to add while I'm here. If you could flip a couple of those photos up, kind of in the life jacket. I guess maybe throw the life jacket one up first. A couple of our local boaters, I'll start with that one. Out at the launch ramp, NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, through a grant program administered by California Fish and Wildlife, created up and down the coast, marine protected area signage and local harbor area signage and fishing regulation signage on nice professionally produced boards, and they got a grant statewide to do this, and we participated in that as well. So Fish and Wildlife paid for all this new material, and we supplied the labor and a location to put it up. They supplied all the signs. We bought the display boards to put them in. They're kind of like a display bulletin board, so we brought those in, and with the facilities folks here in Morro Bay, had those put up over the last week. So some nice, good-looking informational and fishing regulation signs there. So the current regulations are there. The little white pieces of paper-looking things you see there, those are the regulations themselves, and they're magnetic, and those are metal boards, so you can, if the regulations change through in a year, which often they do, the dates and whatnot, they peel off the old one, they'll send a new one, and you stick it on, so the current regulations will be on there. It's pretty slick. So those went up recently this week, and took out the old Coke machine and newspaper racks that used to be there, so it looks a lot better than it used to be. And then on the life jacket front, we've had a local voter donate some life jackets for people to loan. So we put this up at the launch ramp as kind of a pilot or test program to see how well it's used. So we've got youth-ish sized life jackets there hung up at the launch ramp. If anybody gets down there and finds out they don't have life jackets and they want to take their kids out, we've got them available, and hopefully the honor system will work and people can borrow them and put them back when they're done. And that is the end of my
Nice.
report.
Okay. So our next item is the update from Marine Services Ad Hoc Committee.
I have nothing to report at this time. We're
Thank you.
still waiting.
We've been waiting for how long? And do we have a report from the Budget and Finance Ad Hoc Committee? Neil?
We have not met since the last meeting. We have something on the books, a meeting to discuss. Eric and the ad hoc committee are going to go up to city council, not to city council, sorry, to, Eric, help me here.
Finance director?
Yeah, finance director. Looking like the 16th. So we're going to hopefully have an update by the next meeting.
Very good, thank you. And next is the Eelgrass Ad Hoc Committee. And we have had several meetings, but with a good bit of information. Some of that information did not come to me until after this agenda was published. So we are postponing a full report on that for the next meeting, when it will be a little bit more coherent rather than in bits and pieces, and it'll be a larger report. Marine sanctuaries, that's Mr. Reisner, and he has let me know that there is nothing to report from Marine Sanctuary. And we come to the working waterfront. Yes.
That was quick. Good.
I'd like to make a comment about the Marine Sanctuary.
Oh, okay.
Since our newly elected president, I just wanted to comment on the Marine Sanctuary situation with our new president. His latest executive order, well, one of many, aimed at expanding offshore oil drilling in federal waters and opening up other areas for new oil and gas exploration. The order lifts the ban on offshore drilling in the Arctic Ocean and along the coast of the Atlantic. It marks the beginning of potential oil exploration in new marine sanctuaries, including some off the California and Florida coasts. It could also lead to new oil leases in the eastern Gulf of Mexico and on. So this is just this is something that has been brought up. The fishermen organizations have stated this, and it just it's actually here. So I just wanted to bring that up. This is an article that came out of the Sacramento Bee. It was reprinted in the Tribune last Saturday. So just wanted to bring that up.
So that's Marine. So now we come to the working waterfront. Mr. Dowd.
Okay, good evening. We've had no formal meeting, but we have corresponded through emails between all of us. After much review and time and energy spent, recently Chairman Ron, in a meeting with the City Council and Mayor, were directed to simplify and to generalize our work directive of defining and the definition and the policy of a working waterfront and of Measure D area. We are now tasked in creating a general mission statement that may be incorporated into the GP LCP update and policies to be addressed at a later time. And attached is our draft mission statement compiled by Ron and reviewed by our team. I wonder if that can get put up on the board, or up on the wall.
Yeah, we'll get that. You get that extra copy then?
It's there.
Let's go throw it on there. So I'm going to expand, if I might, a little bit on Gene's opening statement there. So at the joint council Harbor Advisory Board chair meeting, we went over all the goals and objectives and came across a working waterfront objective, and a fair amount of talk occurred with the council and the mayor and the Harbor Advisory Board chair and myself, and trying to clarify what we're really looking for, and basically where the council went with it was, hey, let's worry about more details later. Let's get a mission statement out there, a policy statement, kind of a short number of lines or a small paragraph to get a mission statement out, and then other things can follow on later and get that into the general plan, local coastal plan, and that can provide some overall framework guidance, and then potentially later on as zoning and other things start occurring, they can look at more specific things to implement the policy or the mission statement.
My concern is that our ad hoc committee was tasked for coming with a definition of a working waterfront and policies to be implemented. And now we're back into a generalization of a statement. And I feel as though we spent a lot of energy. We're hired by the city council to advise them. And now they're just telling us that we don't really want to give any policy. We want to just give us a general statement. Well, I feel kind of like that was a slap in the face a little bit. And attached, I don't know if you can see that commitment statement, but Ron has put up a pretty good long statement to discussing a generalization of the plan, and then he's given several examples of the working waterfront. And then Dana and I both feel as though if we're going to have some examples, we would like to include several things such as kayak and SUP sales, lessons and rentals, recreational sailing lessons, could be yacht brokerage, boat cleaning, diving, mooring work, and additionally something about other uses that we're not aware about. Maybe wind wave, energy connections, tidal biodiversity. The mission statement could be really simple, just as simple as men and women who get their hands wet working on the waterfront. Or it could be, as stated above, with what Ron has worked on. So at this point, I guess we have to bring it back to the board, decide how you want to create a mission statement. So any comments from the rest of the board?
Jean, I would have a question. When you say that you feel like you've kind of been set back, no longer making policy, but only a very broad statement, are they not just asking for a statement, something that can go into the general plan and the local coastal plan now, and then you will still continue on the work to develop more specific policies?
I would hope so, but they're just putting the cart further on down the road here. Let's work on a working waterfront definition and some policies that can be incorporated into the LCP local plan. We've spent some time working on this thing, and I feel as though the council should listen to our advice. And we have a council member here.
Yes, Matt, please.
Hi, yes, thanks for letting me butt in. Jean, in terms of answering your question, if I could provide a little bit of how I see the situation.
Sure.
Right now, we're undergoing for 20 some odd years a general plan LCP update. And so part of that kind of vague verbiage that asking for in terms of the working waterfront definition, sentence or two, when we go down and then when we start to, I think, further define the various zones and different zoning capacities throughout the city, I think that's where, and I want to disagree with you, because I think the work that you've done with the committee is going to be very helpful when that minutia of the zoning necessities come about. So for some of the council, I can't necessarily speak for all of them, but this concept of a working waterfront from Measure D to the different subcategories along the Embarcadero reaching back to the state park, that's important to know, and it can't necessarily go all of a sudden in that one mission statement. So rather than say, so I very much want to say, no, I really agree with what you've been doing, Gene, and the work is going to be used, but it's just going to be, it's coming at different times. So I want to support you and tell you that I'm at least I really think that we are going to be using it.
Well, to me, just a general statement, a simplified general statement is working waterfront. We want to encourage working waterfront. That's a simple statement right there, but that hasn't done anything.
But in terms of and listening to the discussions throughout the past months about working waterfront, it's a lot more involved than just saying, well, you have different capacities of work there. There are different zones, and so doing that with that 1 or 2 or 3 sentence general statement, I mean, that's going to be key to setting the stage for later when you give this zone will be this zone will be that. So I agree, and I don't want to dismiss it. Being just thinking of in the larger sense in terms of the general plan, the mission statement for the city. I mean, in terms of everything and what they want to bring and take away from Morro Bay, from the natives to the people that come here. Is there a possibility to kill 2 birds with 1 stone with that mission statement? And talking about your harbor in terms of the working waterfront, I think it's possible.
Well, perhaps maybe we should have been redirected with a simpler task in the very beginning.
Or perhaps maybe an additional task in terms of the general purpose of the working waterfront, 2 or 3 sentences, and then more of a detailed bulleted list of what a working waterfront is.
Well, I guess my concern is that I've been around this thing long enough to know how some of these policies work with general plan updates and things like that, is that a lot of times you would make a general statement, then it goes back to somebody, San Luis Obispo or whoever's doing the plan, and they kind of go off on their own tangent and write their own statement. We spent a lot of work putting this together. I would like to see that somehow incorporated in the mission statement so we know that it's going to be involved.
And when you say that, are you saying the mission statement of the general plan or the mission statement of the working waterfront?
Mission statement of the general plan should include our hard work that we've put into it so far.
Okay. You know what? I'll take that recommendation, and when we speak about this, I will bring that up.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
I have a question while you're still here. So have you been able to read this statement that's currently been drafted, the draft mission statement?
No, I have not.
Okay. My next question was going to be if this was something that you thought we were in the right direction based on what City Council might be looking for with this language. So maybe that feedback would be helpful for us to know, because this statement, addresses what was requested. I'm looking at the date right now, Neil, and I'll do my best to look back through the different emails and see if I can find it, and then I will do a group email to you. Great. Okay? Thank you. And likewise, Gene, when I find out about that, I will let you know.
Okay, and then for us to come up with a general statement for Measure D area, I would just think that a general statement is probably all we can really do on that.
And likewise, within the Measure D verbiage already, I do believe that there's a pretty strong statement there.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise we're going to get into the legal mumbo jumbo, and we're not qualified to do that.
Okay. And so maybe, I don't know, a suggestion in terms of the different zones on the working waterfront as you've envisioned them, stick with that Measure D words for that Measure D section of it. Yeah. And then as you develop the other sections, all along down the Embarcadero to the Back Bay.
Okay, and then I would like to I agree with you. Let's see if we can't keep this thing rolling.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And then, ironically, a last little comment here. Last Tuesday at a Planning Commission meeting, a previously condition of a waterfront lease site that required 40% of the lease site to be coastal dependent use, that requirement was eliminated. So now it's like we're trying to keep working waterfront going on, and Planning Commission says, well, we're just going to eliminate that condition. And I just feel like there should have been some other way to do that. So
For the entire zone or for that individual lease?
for that individual lease site, the condition was on the land side, and it didn't include the water lease site. If they could have conditioned it to include the water lease site, then they could have probably met the 40% conditional requirement of being 40% coastal dependent. But they just eliminated that condition completely, thinking let the market bear what's going to bear for that lease site, which bothered me because we're trying to encourage working waterfront.
Sure.
So,
That's how you lose working waterfront.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then case in point with that, I mean that's a wonderful example, Gene, in terms of pushing this forward and making sure that it's included.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, I think maybe we'll just table it until next month, until we get Ron here to help us on this. At least you have some questions.
Well, I hadn't just, with this statement, it's general and it covers a lot, and knowing that we want to be apparently really general with the statement that we're going to put forward, my question might not be really relevant. It might be too focused, and it has to do more with the zoning and thinking about, we start getting into language in here about lands adjacent to Morro Bay, and I think about the working waterfront, and then not just like the city land trust is the west side of Embarcadero, but also including the east side of Embarcadero, and then more importantly is the feeder roads. I mean, if you're going to develop a plan, I was just talking with somebody today as we were driving through Morro Bay, and you come off the Main Street exit, and there's not a sign that say beach is this way, downtown this way. That's really, and maybe because I drive the roads every day, I don't see it. Newcomers might see these signs, but some kind of signage that, okay, well,
Yeah,
then I would go right past them.
Yeah.
So anyway, but then once you get onto these roads that are feeding you down, like Beach Street and Harbor and all the roads that run down, I'm not saying the entire road, but maybe the last so many feet start to include that working waterfront where you start to incorporate some kind of, entrance into the working waterfront.
Okay, so as a board, you guys have all looked at the draft letter submitted by Ron. Do you guys have any comment? Would you like to shorten that up, lengthen that, or you want to create a whole new simplified statement? Bill?
It is pretty broad, but
Yes.
I guess that's what they're looking for. So I don't know if I can just piecemeal and eliminate anything. So I think it's a good start.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The one thing it doesn't include is what the statement you had mentioned about this lists specific uses that exist, but doesn't mention anything for potential future uses. There's not as much flexibility with encouraging some kind of new business.
Right. If you're going to create a general policy and then you start giving examples, then you've opened the board. It's the same thing like in Measure D, when they give an example and then you're stuck with the examples. So either we eliminate the examples or we include everything we can as an example.
It does say included but not limited to.
Yeah,
Including
I
but not
realize
limited
that.
to, so that's kind of
It
your...
says that in Measure D
The same
too.
thing Measure D says. So.
I mean, do you think the city might have a preference as to that, if they prefer a list such as this, or would they prefer a blanket statement? Because I could see the argument going both ways.
I would personally like to simplify that. I would prefer to see it simplified down to categories or statements or words that would catch all those different uses, including things that maybe you wouldn't foresee, that obviously you can't foresee into the future, because you're right. Even though it says including but limited to, you put this long laundry list on there. Well, what about mariculture? What about this? What about that? You could subcategorize yourself to death on this thing, trying to catch everything. So,
Right.
I mean, we could keep this. I mean, my suggestion might be, you've got this list here, keep it on here for now, but with the committee and with input from the board, maybe after the meeting or tonight or whenever, see if we can come up with some more broader categories that capture groups of these things, and one, cut down on words, but make it more simple and not try and paint ourselves into a corner with specific
Dana, how do you feel?
uses.
Well, I think that might be, maybe a little bit shorter, but more general categorized rather than all these individuals. And then, like you and I both were going, well, what about this and this and this and this and this? Because they're not on that list.
Right.
But some of them are already existing and some of them are not. So I think that your idea of bringing this back after we go through it again.
And we'll listen to what the board has to say?
Right.
Yeah. The GP, LCP is a long ways off, so it's not, we don't have to have it done tonight.
Correct. And I think working with council, especially our liaison, Councilman Makwetsky, and his comments, we can have all that extra verbiage ready for when the general plan asks for it.
Right, and we can come up with a general statement, and then we can also come up with suggestions to include some other things later on. So,
I like that.
okay. Lynn, do you have something you want to add?
Well, I'm just glancing at this and saying, I'm looking at this and saying, what stronger words might there be? And I haven't found any for the water dependent, because that's sort of the crux of the whole matter.
Getting your hands wet.
What is water dependent and how to make that understandable in a way that nobody could confuse it and add things that are not water dependent, as we've seen happen in so many instances. But I haven't found the right word yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I know just what Lynn meant, and I agree. But, yeah, also, and I'm sure you guys probably did it, but I wasn't part of the group there, but there's lots and lots of working waterfronts around the United States. Designations from various cities, towns, and ports. And just going through, and I'm sure you guys probably already did, but going through some of the things that they had done and how they set up that structure and came to.
They range from motels to fishing villages. So,
Yeah, I just used the fishing village one.
Yeah.
Hotels water dependent?
in some places, yes.
Yeah, and depending on the location, it varied quite a bit. If you were in Florida, motels were part of the working waterfront. If you were in Maine, it was all about fishing. So it depends on where you are. Here we have all of it going on. So we need to specify water dependent, but I think that the definitions that we can add are just, as far as the commercial, the recreational, and whatever future holds for water dependent businesses or whatever, just activities in general. So I think we just bring it back and maybe make it a little tighter and stronger.
And then we need to define general statements for the Measure D area. So we can bring that back, or the board has some general statements for Measure D area?
Before we go to Measure D, can I just finish this? So in line with this water dependent, I think my recollection, and stop me if I'm wrong, was that we talked about there being zones in which different uses were going to be used. So we weren't trying to exclude hotels or tourism serving industries.
Right.
Not everything had to be water dependent, but that we had a focus, or we had some kind of percentage or some kind of zonage. So I think that's kind of my only clarification, I think, for that point, that not the whole zone was we're not turning the whole waterfront into Measure D water related. We're having some kind of zoning. Am I right in saying
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes. Well, there's two ways to handle this. One is a PD overlay, and that's through the zoning. Perhaps another way also would be through the Eric, the harbor lease management policy. So that may be another way to handle this thing, is that if you're actively commercially fishing, your lease fee is so much. And so maybe that's not so much zoning as it is a master lease
Fee
harbor
schedule.
management policy thing.
Okay.
So,
All right. Oh, one last layer on that is the word intention might be good to use, what the intention of it is, because, you know, when we're all long gone and somebody looks at this again and they're having to interpret what the intention is, if you just put it clearly in there what the intentions of these are, I think, you know, speaking like legalese, you know, I think might be important to include the intention of those if it's going to be a general statement.
Bill?
Bill?
I wanted to go back to your statement on the Planning Commission, which kind of goes back to what we're trying to attempt to do, and then the Planning Commission, if there's already a set of rules right now, and then they're just giving a waiver, is that what's happening, Gene? I mean, I'm just kind of curious, because if the planning in the city isn't in line with what our thinking is, what's the point?
You'll have to discuss that with staff.
Okay.
I mean, that's,
Well, I mean,
I was
you know,
upset when that came
Well, I
through.
mean, again, is it-
And I can understand why they were trying to do it, to make sure that they have a viable business down there, they don't have an empty site. But we're trying to encourage the working
Correct.
waterfront.
That's what I mean.
And perhaps not eliminating that previous condition, but incorporating the water side of that lease site would allow them to continue that on.
right,
To meet
And-
their condition.
correct, okay. But, you know, I mean, this goes to your first statement, when you brought this up, about how discouraged you are in all the work that we're doing here, and what we feel as the vision, and what our concept of working waterfront, but it's not being listened to or incorporated into really what is going to happen.
Eric?
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to add and kind of build on Jeremiah's comment from a second ago. The National Working Waterfront Network has a toolkit with all this stuff. There's other working waterfronts that have been implemented and policy and other stuff created. You know, if I've learned one thing of 20 some odd years in government, it is don't reinvent the wheel. There's lots of other people who have done this before, and look to their documents. And I'm sure there's documents out there that we can borrow language that, well, you say coastal dependent and marine dependent. Well, marine dependent in what way? I'm sure there's, you know, that need, you know, access to clean and safe and water. And there's some things, some caveats you can put in there. Even the California Coastal Act and some of the policy and guidance in the Coastal Act might lend some language that we can borrow to get away from the laundry list of 27 different items and make categories that make sense, that are understandable.
So let's bring it back next month.
Yes.
Do we need a motion on that?
No.
Or we'll simply have it on the agenda for next month? Okay. Next, review and recommendations on proposed changes to the definitions of the Morro Bay Municipal Code.
Thank you. So as you will, hopefully most of you recall, not all of you were here, but I think most of you were here. Some time ago, we started on an endeavor to go through our municipal code and our rules and regulations and modernize. It became a city council goal last year, not for this specific exercise, but we were doing a public safety code scrub of the municipal code, meaning go through all the public safety related stuff and see what we can clean up, modernize. There's some pretty old codes on the books there that don't make sense in this modern age. So we piggybacked onto that process, took it in about 4 phases, over about a 12-month period or 8-month period. Started with definitions, then went into safety-related things, and then went into environmental-related things, and had, like I say, 3 or 4 categories we went through. Took all of your input, took what was existing on the books, took all your input, things we saw, shortfalls needed revision, and brought it all. And now I'm finally circling back with all those things and starting again with definitions. So definitions kind of live in several different places in our municipal code and rules and regulations. You look at most jurisdictions and you look at the beginning of each chapter and it has all the definitions listed for everywhere. And so my first intention would be to put them all in one place and get rid of them spread out all over the municipal code. And I will just start, if you think this is a good way of doing it, just go down these one by one. This is in track changes mode. Hopefully you've got color. If not, it's not a deal killer. It's pretty straightforward how it works. Anything that's lined out was what the existing language was. Anything that's crossed out was the existing language. Anything with an underline is new language. And hopefully it's in color, or at least in a different contrast, so you can see what was changed to make it stand out a little bit easier.
Quick question, maybe.
Yep.
guidance here. So I personally, after reading these, only have a couple of small comments for maybe 2 of these, and otherwise agree with most of this. Would it be better served to maybe just go point by point and say, does anybody have a question on this, or is this okay? I mean, I've read, assuming everybody's read it, if we need to read them all into.
I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine going that
If you're
way.
okay with that?
So I'll just add, most of them on page 1 and all of them on page 1 and 2 and in the beginning of page 3 are existing things we had and modified. The ones that are all red on the last page, those are things we're adding that we never really had anywhere. We might have had it sort of a definition, but not specifically. So those are all things that I'm adding in.
Maybe.
So yeah, if you want to go through, I'll just name them off one by one, and if you've no comments, just move right along.
Yeah.
Okay. Anchorage area. Houseboat? We need to wait for Dana to get back?
I said that. And a houseboat means a watercraft or on or in the water of Morro Bay, floating or non-floating?
That's crossed out.
Oh, that's crossed out.
yeah.
Okay, that does not show up well in my copy.
Oh.
Yeah,
So, all right, I didn't know how a non-floating one.
that's why I struck that, a
It is
non-floating
there. All right.
houseboat, kind of.
But again, on this same thing, not principally used for transportation. And I would have a question on that, considering my own situation. Principal use, I do not principally use my boat for transportation. I certainly do use it as a boat, but most of the time it would be a houseboat.
Good point. Would a better word be principally designed for transportation? Because a houseboat, I mean, the intent here is, I mean, there's boats that are obviously made that aren't made to go from
Right,
point to
and a
point on the ocean or anywhere. They're made to sit in
houseboat-
one pot and not ever go anywhere.
Houseboat is designed to be in one place, to be stable.
So principally designed for transportation?
I think that would be a big improvement.
Makes
That
sense.
wouldn't scare me.
Or ability to move was removed, like if the motors
Well,
are
it
moved
says,
and the masts are removed.
Yeah, they're putting in capable of navigating ocean waters under its own power, which certainly expands that and is much more definitive. But if you're still using principally used for transportation,
Okay, that's
okay.
Totally
Think
reasonable.
That's much better.
okay. Any more on that one?
Nope.
Mooring?
I have an input on this one. At the very end where it says, and is subject to city specifications as to construction size and materials, you might add maintenance schedule, so that the city has, that's just my comment.
Okay.
But you can make a comment that says no. It's open for discussion, you know?
No, that's a good point.
Except those people who own their own moorings do their own maintenance, but they still must abide by and be subject to the specifications of constructions and size.
Well, I mean, we specify the maintenance too. We specify that every other year they have to be inspected. So I think the maintenance is a good
Oh,
add.
okay, all right.
We don't care who does it, just as long as it gets done. Okay. Any more on mooring? Okay. Motorboat, eliminating altogether. And it's a weird, it's kind of like a non-floating houseboat. Because a sailboat is a motorboat under this definition with a motor. So I'm eliminating that one. Pier?
Yes. Now, are we trying to comply with our definitions with the state of California also? And the building codes? Uniform Building Code considers floating piers. They don't have slips, they have floating piers. Everything
So
that-
what we would commonly call a dock or a set of slips is a pier, a floating pier under
yes.
California?
Yeah. But I like our definition.
Yeah,
That's fine with me.
that seems odd. Anything else on pier?
Yes, I would have a question, clarification. Not subject to tidal action. Well, the piers are subject to tidal action, but they don't react to them.
That's the intent was the reactionary thought.
Up and down, back and forth.
Right.
They don't move because the tide goes up and down.
Right.
You get some better suggestion to. I get your point. It is subject to tidal action. Just
It is
exists. It's subject to it.
But it does not react to it.
Does not react to tidal action? Change it to
It does
that?
not react to tidal action. It stays in the
sense.
same place no matter what the tide does.
And if it does, you have a problem. Okay? Any more on that? Vessel? I will tell you where I got this from. Two parts where it came from. It came from Santa Barbara, because I copied it outright. Santa Barbara used it from a recent Supreme Court, recent meaning within the last couple of years, Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a vessel. They heard a case of some guy he was towing something that he claimed wasn't a vessel, and Supreme Court ruled on it. Got all the way to the Supreme Court, so that's what the Supreme Court, what do they call it when they have their... Yeah, the justices have their statements, whatever it is, they come
Their
out and
opinions.
rule. So that came from the Supreme Court. Seemed
would-
like a good place to go.
Okay. But I would still say, well, ask, not say. The purpose of carrying people or goods over the water, it carries them through the water, not over the water, unless it's an airplane.
Okay. All right, I'll make a note. Yeah.
You know, if you're going to go to all the trouble of rewriting all of your definitions, those words mean things.
Okay. Any more on that one?
No.
Vessels of a commercial nature? The reason for that language change was we had calendar year, and depending on when people bring in fish tickets when they're first applying for a slip, it got wonky. So just previous 12 months made the most sense to me.
So just to be clear, though, aquaculture-wise, we don't have landings per se. We do go through this one. That wouldn't apply to us. It'd be or aquaculture. Is that how I'm reading this? Vessels of commercial nature shall also include vessels engaged in licensed and/or permitted aquaculture, mariculture activities.
Correct. Yes.
So we don't
That
have-
includes operations like you.
Got it.
And I put license and/or permitted because you may have licensing, you may have permitting, you may have both. I didn't want to try
We
and
do. We have everything.
paint that into any one corner.
Is there other types of commercial vessels, though? I mean, there's work vessels that don't do any fishing or mariculture or aquaculture. I mean, Frank Loving's boats don't.
Well, for our intents and purposes, vessels of commercial nature is commercial fishing, is what our vessels of commercial nature are. That's who we rent our slips to, and that's where this definition comes from. If Frank Loving wanted to rent one of our slips, he's not going to be assigned one permanently. Ours are for commercial fishing boats. That's what this definition is for. I mean, yeah, there are other vessels of a commercial nature.
No, but that clarifies, I think.
Yeah.
That same question.
Well, okay, but that's for you.
Maybe we should add in the beginning of that sentence, for the purposes of qualifying for city slips or renting city slips or something like that. Vessels of a commercial nature means. Okay.
I mean, the pontoon boats are commercial vessels.
Yeah, subsea, the tour boats, and
Yeah. Tour boats. They may not get slips from the city, but that's still fine.
Okay, I'll add something along the nature for the
Or do
purpose
they
of
have-
leasing city slips or
or do they have a different definition that is not commercial? Separate the fishing from other commercial.
But should something arise in the future that involves commercial vessels that are not fishing vessels, potentially raise problems with that kind of definition.
And our city policy is to rent only to commercial fishing vessels, our 50-odd slips. That's by city policy, and this is defining what a commercial fishing vessel is. Maybe we should just,
Vessels of commercial nature, so it doesn't necessarily.
why don't we simplify this even more and get rid of what I just said to add, get rid of vessels of a commercial nature and just put commercial fishing vessel means.
I mean, that describes that.
Yeah.
And then anywhere else in our slip rental and other municipal code where it
Just a
says
vessel.
vessel of commercial nature, we just put commercial fishing vessels.
Yeah, or a vessel is the other type, right?
And that makes it a lot simpler.
Because, yeah, one right above it describes all the other vessels, whether they're commercial or not.
And it also means aquaculture, mariculture people.
Then with vessels, should you go up and add goods or services for vessel? If you're going to have two, you're going to have either commercial fishing, aquaculture, and then vessels be...
Well, a commercial fishing vessel meets the definition of a vessel in general. It's
Yeah, I'm trying to just
designed for-
differentiate. Like, where would you cover, like, the tour boats, the pontoon boats we're talking
Well,
about?
those are people or goods,
I'm not worried about those.
Okay,
because they're under vessel.
I don't need
They're
a
just
special
under vessel.
definition for them.
okay,
This is just for slip rental, and what's a commercial fishing vessel? This is what it is.
done.
Okay? All right, simplified that one. Water of Morro Bay? All good? Morro Bay Harbor? My question on this one, and we kind of bounced this one around in the office, Water of Morro Bay as defined, lying bayward of the federal Colorado line. Some people didn't like that. Bayward. Inland? Is that a better word?
I'll let you use your discretion.
Okay, I'm going to use inland instead of bayward.
You can talk about elevation, above the tidal line, if you're trying to talk about land.
Okay, any more on that one? Liveaboard. Always going to be a challenging definition. We added this as another means of adding that language to give us another measuring stick by which to potentially measure what a liveaboard is, other than the usual and customary things associated with one's a boat or living aboard.
And I think it adds a lot to that definition, and it does tie it down, I think, a
You're
good
talking
bit more.
about, and who otherwise cannot reasonably demonstrate residence.
Residents elsewhere,
Correct.
yes.
So if you do have residence elsewhere and you stay on your boat for more than 4 nights, it's okay? You're not a liveaboard?
You can, so there's two parts to the liveaboard definition, 4 more days or nights and over a 60-day or more period.
Okay.
So this doesn't count the other one out?
So most people that are living aboard, I don't think are staying on their boats that often if they truly live somewhere else.
The only question I had with this was the number of days. It says like 4 days in a 7-day period. Is that a number that's been useful for the harbor, for the city, or?
It's
Or-
kind of a standard that most harbors are using.
Okay. That's what I
Because
was
there is
curious
not a good one. And it's and who otherwise cannot. So you're 7 or more days or nights, you're doing the usual and customary things, and who otherwise cannot reasonably demonstrate a resident elsewhere. So it's a cumulative.
And that is a definition that has been used for at least 37 years.
As long as it works.
Okay, offshore mooring, eliminate that definition altogether. It didn't make much sense to me. And the same with shoreside mooring. Okay, nothing on that. Sewage holding tank?
That's good to me.
I would question that. It's used to retain sewage, but a holding tank is a very specific kind of sewage that sewage could be from the galley,
That's not,
no?
from the galley's not sewage, that's gray water, which we get to later.
Yeah, if it hasn't touched human feces, I think is the definition on the.
If it hasn't passed through a human, it's gray water.
I mean, your galley sink doesn't go into the holding tank, right?
No, not yet. I'm sure someday we'll have to.
Well, I think that's good stuff.
Yeah, later on,
It's
we've
called
got
compost.
gray water. Where's
Yeah, I
gray water?
know that later on comes the gray water.
Wastewater from bath showers, sinks, washing machines, and other appliances not come into contact with human or animal feces or excreta.
Okay,
Like I said, looks good to me.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Adequate vessel sanitation facility. It used to say prevent direct discharge of human waste. It really should say treated or untreated. Because if it's treated, then you're a wastewater treatment plant that has to be permitted by water board, and I don't know that anybody's going to be able to go there.
They're going to have to
Okay,
change that.
add dinghy. Okay, dock. Dockage.
That's okay.
Gray water.
I think it's good. But is this something you wanted to talk about? This is the other part.
Well, no, gray water is fine. It's just that the other is black water. And I guess I have to redefine sewage in my brain.
Head float berth. Okay, moored.
Good.
Mooring. The verb. Okay, operable. Got to have something on operable. That one was a direct borrow from Santa Barbara as well.
It looks very clear. That's good.
Fairly similar to what we have, but added safely under its own power. Okay, pier.
Yeah, isn't that dealt with in 150420? Why is it twice?
Yeah, why do I have that twice? Good question.
I think you forgot.
New, maybe.
1504-120. Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to create more work for myself, I guess. Okay, I'll make a note of that.
Although the one is longer than the other, so you might want to.
Yeah, which one do we like better?
Oh, because the other one says wharf, quay, or
Quay.
other non-floating. This one stops at wharf and quay, and the other one says non-floating. Where is it? Non-floating landing facility. Pier means any fixed structure not subject to tidal action.
One says mooring vessels, one says securing vessels.
For mooring vessels.
Looks good to me.
Okay, well, if you have any strong preference one way, I'll morph those together and
Whatever.
take the best of everything. Okay, seaworthy.
Good.
Adequate or sufficiency, might not a better word be adequacy or appropriate?
I took this straight out of the International Maritime Dictionary. Because
Well,
there's
I
seaworthy
guess
definitions that are all over the map.
withdraw my comment.
Don't make me pull it out.
I still think they're wrong.
The question of crew, that just kind of like
Well, seaworthiness comes into play.
pirates, I guess.
It's a very subjective definition, obviously, but. Okay, slip. Okay, so a few notes Thank you.
No, that's not a slip.
on that one.
Excellent.
Good suggestion to go through those that way, Neil. Thank you. That definitely made that a little quicker.
Okay, on to C7. Work program for 2017-2018 City Council goal objectives.
Okay, so as you know, we brought council work program stuff to the Harbor Advisory Board a couple meetings ago, took some input. Chairman brought that to the City Council on April 11th, got some input. What you see here is pretty much the finalized version of those work plan objectives. What we didn't take to the council, and one thing they asked for, was when do you intend to implement these things, meaning what quarter, the Qs over there on the first, second, third column. So what I've got in here is some draft quarters of implementation that I'd like to run by you folks and get your input. This is what I would kind of foresee is running them through. So goal 1B, that's all sort of guidance and input to other processes. So that's going to be as required. There's really going to be nothing to happen on those first three. WPE number 5, eelgrass, with the ad hoc committee work, that's now into quarter number 3. And consider hiring consultancy to facilitate the process. Just an add note to that, I do have in my draft council budget so a little bit of funding to potentially go towards some hiring some consultancy. So quarter 1 through 3, any comments on that? I'm trying to get some forward progress on that. And then in the fourth quarter, WPE number 8, kind of consolidated those two that are lined out into something a little more short. One of the other council's comments was, man, you guys have a lot of goal objectives, or a lot of work plan elements, but a lot of them were multiple layered things that I just separated out, so it made it look like more. So I kind of added them back together to shorten it down a little bit and consolidate. So develop a eelgrass mitigation policy for approval. I would foresee, if we're going to go there, potentially getting some consultancy and other help on board in the first 3 quarters of the year, and these are fiscal year quarters, meaning the first quarter we're in right now, are going to be into, and July 1st, sorry, fourth quarter right now. So what I'd foresee is in the first 3 quarters of the year, seeing what those policy development paths might be, getting some consultancy on board, some experts on board, hired experts to help us through that. And then if we see a path forward sometime this time next year, starting really down whole heart into developing some sort of policy and hiring some more serious consultancy, which more serious meaning probably more money to try and get that stuff implemented, because it's not simple. Neil?
So with that, who kicks off that decision? Will the city be saying it's time, here's the money, or will the ad hoc committee come and present to the board and say, we're at a point now where we need to hire and we request funds?
I think a little bit of both. I think, assuming the funding stays in the budget, I've identified it in the budget as the council is going to see starting next week, and assuming it survives in there, and you know, one of our part of the budgeting process is budgeting against the goals and objectives and putting a cost to the goals and objectives, so council can see, hey, we want to do this thing. Well, this thing has a cost. Here's how much it is, and here it is in the budget. Approve it in the budget, and now we can implement it as a goal. So I put it in there in the draft budget, and we'll, assuming it survives next budget process, which is going to take a little while, another month or so here, we'll have funding available, and then I'll work with the committee, and we'll bring that consultancy on board kind of as we deem it advisable. Okay. Anything else on that one?
Any other comments?
Number 9, WP number 9, license agreement MOU with the Central Coast Maritime Museum and to establish their museum in the Triangle Lot. Q1 I put on there for license agreement. That's probably going to be done before Q1 even happens. I've on the very final stages of getting that license agreement approved between Maritime Museum and us. It's a city manager has the authority to approve that, and we've been working back and forth for the last 6-8 months on that. So that is darn close, and hopefully we get done, knock on wood. And then we'll be looking, they're submitting right now, have submitted already for their plans for sort of stage 1 of the museum to planning and building folks for the permits. And once they come out of that, we'll be able to do negotiate a longer-term lease agreement for their bigger facility, and then redo the MOU, which is now 15 or so years old. So I'd be looking at Q2, meaning late next summer, early fall, going into those sort of negotiations with the Maritime Museum on the MOU. And that kind of stuff we'd bring back here as well for input as needed. Okay. Next page. This is still goal 1, which is achieve economic and fiscal sustainability. Objective D, evaluate opportunities for new and expanded revenue sources, including but not limited to blah, blah, blah. We had a big number of items that we looked at both last year and recently as potential revenue generators. Pretty long list. This is just sort of how I'd start looking at implementing these. A lot of these are research and bring to council for consideration, meaning we go do homework, find out what sort of revenue this might generate, what the pros, cons, and whatnot are, and bring that to the city council. I don't know why I didn't have something on WP number 1. Research and bring to council consideration, establishment of paid parking on and around the Embarcadero. Any suggestions on that one? I didn't put a quarter on there for some reason. Anybody?
Can you repeat which ones you were covering on that last?
WPE number 1. Participate in the research and bring for council consideration establishment of paid parking on and around the Embarcadero. I think I didn't put anything on that because that's probably going to be a more citywide community development led effort, because it's not just going to be on the west side of the Embarcadero. It's going to be the probably waterfront and downtown area, and that one's I think going to be more like the first ones on the first page, as required when the city and city council start grappling with that.
Yeah, just tied to their date, whatever quarter they put theirs in.
We will ride on the coattails.
Or do we want to be a quarter before it to have a discussion so that we have the information ready going in?
I don't think so. I think at some point the city and council are going to define an area or zone or direction we may try and go to start looking at that, and at that point we'll have a better definition of what the harbor's element might be in that. I'd say as required is fine.
I just want to make sure I've got it right, Eric, that paid parking comes in various, there's various methods of paying for parking. As a board, would we suggest perhaps methods that might be acceptable and others that might not?
I think when we get to that point, yeah.
Oh.
I wouldn't see it being restricted to just, shall we do pay parking? Yes, no. If yes, where? I would see weighing in all those sorts of different things. Methods.
Or what? So, and I'm only speaking for myself personally, but I see lots that people pay, whatever the charge is per day or per half day and so forth. And then there's other situations where there's parking meters up and down the street. So that's two entirely different, or a parking structure. Mm-hmm. So now there's 3 entirely different types of parking. And so where I guess I'm going with this is some of them I consider very acceptable, of course, and then other types that might not be quite as acceptable.
Yeah, I think that would all be up for discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, I think once the city starts moving forward with it, and again, I would probably think this might be a community development-led effort in the larger sense, city manager with city council directing it to move forward. I think once it starts moving forward and we get more of a definition of what and how the process looks, at that point we would be weighing in on all those sorts of things. Yeah. Yeah, down the line. Okay. Mm-hmm. Number 2 under that, bringing for-profit events and activities in the public area use permit process to a license agreement process, or similar. There's other names we've been batting around, but folks that are out there having events on public property for profit, some sort of a fee-based revenue generation scheme. So I'd look at that as a quarter 2 endeavor, meaning next fall. Along with the food truck, and there's your reference to special events there, Gene, at the end. Looking at food trucks and license agreement with some sort of revenue collection for businesses operating on the bay that aren't currently operating as a approved lease site or sublease. bespoke maintenance, bottom cleaners, all those sorts of different things that are out there that should have some sort of a basic license agreement with a fee base to it of some sort, to be determined, obviously. So all those would be Q2 items. So those would be the first ones I'd, staff-wise, would like to tackle and swing back through the Harbor Advisory Board.
I have
Neil?
a general question, just kind of going back to the pretense, this whole thing. These were all looked at already by the city council in that meeting?
Yes.
The April 11th meeting?
Yep.
And they've given general approval of this, and they just
Yeah.
want us to prioritize?
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's what we're at. Okay.
So, to follow up on that with Neil, so as we approach these items, then we'll be able to provide input.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not, any of these we're not here to discuss the ins and outs of them. It's just, when do we want to start looking at these? And yeah, we'll dig into the weeds when we get to them.
Well, I think that your recommendations on the red are all pretty good. You know what our timeline should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I need to go through all these one by one.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, anything stick out on anybody?
Yeah,
Jeremiah?
WPE 5. Now, okay,
Research?
Research and big. No.
Depends on which.
WPE 5,
Research and bring to council for consideration slip pier and dock fees or metering to fully recover the amounts of the city spent for water and electrical uses on the various facilities.
Third quarter.
Third quarter.
So that would be next 2000.
January. Basically the start of Q3.
now, I could be wrong on that, but as far as the slips go, we added a fee, if I'm not mistaken, a year or 2 years ago to cover the electrical and the water. Is that correct?
A couple of years ago,
Yes.
2 or 3.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't this last year. It might have been the year before. We did a basic rundown for cost recovery. The premise was cost recovery and how much cost recovery were we getting on all the city's fees. And I don't have the numbers on the top of my head right now, but we were, according to the data that we put together, we were about $1 low on the slip fees to what we had defined as a cost recovery rate, and we added on an extra 42 or 48 or 52 cents, about halfway there, identifying that as, let's try and make up for some of the water and electrical loss, because that's a known quantity that we have solid data on because it's metered and we know what we pay for and we divide it up amongst it. And I think I wish I had that information, the full information in front of me. I want to say it was 50 some odd cents was the per slip per month was what we identified as the water and electrical uses across our slips, as I recall. And that's the number we used to add on to the master fee to try and make up part of that more or less dollar. I think that's how that played out.
Okay, and I could have this wrong. I was, I was up north fishing when the final came through on this.
Yeah, it was Tom.
And so one of the things was that at that time, the Harbor Department, yourself, figured what it costs to keep a commercial boat, or what the slippage should be. And we were right at break-even point.
We were a little low. We weren't break even. I don't know the exact number.
And in that number was already factored the electrical and the water.
It had everything
Right, of course.
Best as we
Of cour-
can
Of course you would have.
Yeah.
And then I was present here at this meeting when Mr. Buckingham wanted to revisit and add electrical onto the bill. And then a short time later, the bill went up, and then my understanding, it was for that particular electrical that the city asked to go up. And I felt then we were paying twice, because it was already factored in the bill once.
Yeah, and I don't question.
So that we were paying, you see what I'm saying? So that's kind of what I had as a question to that.
So this is going to be
Now we're
research.
revisiting the same electrical bill for the third time.
And our finding might be that we don't change it.
You don't change it.
Yeah, and this is research and bring to council for
Yeah,
It's
consideration.
already gone up 2 times.
Well, I don't understand.
I'm with you.
I mean, the last time they refactored it went up again and again.
Yeah, but this isn't to decide how much it's going to go up. It's to say if it's going to go up, and if it is, which way is it going to go up, with meters or with fees or no increase. That could be our recommendation.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremiah, is that I don't understand. You're getting a bill for just electricity on top of the slippage bills?
No,
No. Okay.
no, it's when you pay your mortgage.
Right, mortgage.
It's factored in.
That's correct. So you,
And then they added it again, so it was double factored in. And now, I was
Well,
looking at
yeah,
reviewing it again. Well, we just did.
well, I mean, I don't
Twice.
remember us reviewing it a second time, and unless that was a staff's decision on your part, is that? I mean, I
No,
don't
we just,
understand.
since that one raising, it was like 48 or 52 cents. I can't remember the exact one, but since the years subsequent to the budgets we set subsequent to that, it's just gone up by CPI factor 2%, 2.5%.
I see.
I mean, again, this is research and bring to council for consideration, so we're going to look back at that and see exactly where we were with that and look at current metering and current rates and current fees. One thing that has changed dramatically since then is our water rates have gone up enormously. If you live in Moore Bay, I'm sure you've seen the city finally raised its water rates after 20 years of them being pretty much static. So everybody's sewer and water rates have gone substantially up. So that's another factor.
I will add to, I guess maybe what Jeremiah's also saying is, when we were going over and reviewing all these points, is this one that was from the HAB recommendation, or was this city
I
or
brought
staff?
this came through from
Okay, I just don't.
from the big laundry list of stuff and ideas we brought. It
Okay.
came, I can't remember who exactly or where exactly, but it was brought up through the HAB process, yeah.
All right. So we're just going to look at it. I mean, it's not-
I just kind of get.
Yeah. I like Bill or Neil, whoever was said, it could be static. It could be that it's totally justified the way it is. Any others on any of those? So a bunch of quarter 3 things, some quarter 4 things, a couple more back to quarter 1s because we're doing that all the time. Bill, your State Park Marina, I've got that as a quarter 1. We're actually trying to re-engage with parks now to get them back at the table, so
Thank you.
we're actually at quarter 0 on that one.
On number 6, WE 6,
Okay?
could that go sooner? Rather than January, could we?
Something that could generate, well, I guess they all can generate revenue, but,
But this one in particular, we have a little bit of research on that, right?
and it's summertime,
Good.
like right now.
Yeah, you want to go sooner?
For
Yeah.
boat storage.
Well, it just seems like, we've had this issue that's been going on for some time about a citywide ordinance about parking vehicles and trailers, and this could be a moneymaker for the city since there's no other spaces around.
Right.
You want to throw a Q out there?
Q2?
Q1?
Q1?
We're already Q1 right now?
No, it's still.
Q1 will start July 1st.
Yeah, so there's still Q1 option out there.
I'd go Q1. I would like it.
I agree.
Okay,
Sooner the
I
better.
agree.
Yeah.
Q1. Okay.
Good point. That's a good one.
to get an operator to do some storage down
Yeah, they just took all the overall chipping. Any others?
Sorry, any others? On that page? Okay. Going, so the top of the next page, the fire department gut check of the current cost allocation, as you
Wait,
recall.
Sorry, real fast, to interrupt you.
What?
Before we move this page.
Yep.
Some of these ones regarding the leases down here, if they're set up in Q4, that'll be in, I was just thinking if there was a way to put that before, maybe most businesses operate not on like an annual year, like on the tax year. If you could get it in before any of these changes that they could maybe benefit from for, before January 1st. I don't know if that's too soon to turn something around for the city, but I mean, this probably will not be a short process, adding incentives for businesses to diversify or.
So you're saying second quarter, so that we get there?
Yeah, for like W9, E9. Yeah, 9 and 10.
That's a staff function. Can you guys do that in Q2?
Yeah, and Lori just whispered, and made a good point. We're in the process, I won't say just starting, but pretty close to just starting, getting in the process of revising our lease management policy. And that could be a place where that sort of language might live as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'd like to see that Q2.
Would that be Q2 for that lease management?
Those two.
No, we're
Or
working on
Q1.
that right now.
Should we put that in Q1
That's in this
too?
year's goals and objectives. We're working on revising that policy, and that's a place where some of that language you're potentially looking at might live in the lease management
So
policy.
9 and 10 in Q1?
So that's almost like Q0, which is right now.
Okay. Q-1.
I'll just put Q1 on there. It's Q0. Okay. Next page. During the council deliberation with the Harbor Advisory Board Chair back on the 11th, the WP1 in the beginning before goal 3 there, we as a HAB recommended the city do a OMB compliant cost allocation study redo throughout the city. And while that is potentially under consideration, it's a fairly big ticket item to hire a consultant to do that. What was agreed upon at the joint meeting was, hey, we can at least perform a gut check of the current cost allocation, which hopefully will start or continue with the Finance Ad Hoc Committee meeting with the Finance Director and starting to drill down on more of these costs. We did get our final cost allocation number for this year. I don't have it off the top of my head, but they do revise it every year, and it's continually changing as this, it was done 2009, 2010, when the city had a very different structure. So there's things that are happening now that we haven't been getting charged for, and now we are getting charged for because they weren't in the cost allocation. And so they kind of addendums to the cost allocation are occurring now. So that'll be a good time to look at that. So that's why I've got that on Q1. Just more of a Q0, we'll be looking at that hopefully as we go into budgeting. Okay, goal 3, improve infrastructure in public spaces. Any comment on the half a dozen or so in there? 4 in there?
You had public comment on this.
Yes, we did.
Oh, right, so good point. So Sandy Twist came in and commented on restroom and cleaning and trash cleaning along the waterfront, something that we've been wrestling with for quite a while. One of the council goal objectives was to inventory, evaluate, and refresh existing programs for volunteer groups to assist in providing routine maintenance in the city, such as adopt-a-park programs, while soliciting and facilitating additional volunteer group support for routine maintenance, such as park beautification and small capital projects, such as park bathroom reconstruction. In my draft proposed budget, I also set aside a moderate amount of money, small amount of money for potential small capital projects, meaning restroom beautification things. So again, like the eelgrass consultancy, tied to a goal objective that the council has approved and a work plan objective the council has approved, funding to go along with it. So that'll get added into the budget, and assuming that survives, now we've got a little bit of money. Should we get some volunteer groups or others to come help figure out how to help us do some of this restroom stuff, we'll have some money to throw out some hard costs.
Yeah, I would argue that Q0 on this as well, because we're just now going into the major tourism time for the summer when this impact is going to start happening now.
Okay, so I'll put Q1/0 on that. That's a good point. Okay. Okay, goal 4, which is review.
One question is,
Bill?
all these goals and objectives, I mean, this will require, some time and some energy and maybe some research, i.e. the restrooms, which we have been talking about for years, the deplorable conditions that the city of Morro Bay has, talk to people who are blue in the face and deaf. I've made a couple suggestions, as you all know, and I've been in your office many times, as you all know. And I've kind of somewhat given up, only because of the fact that nothing ever gets done. And we still get people coming in here, and the restrooms are still deplorable. If we brought something to the table that made some sense, would someone listen to us?
Well, and
I'll be very honest with you. As I said, I have an opportunity to go to Achievement House. Achievement House does the Caltrans restrooms at the rest stops. And actually, I don't want to waste my time, though, going to the Achievement House, meeting with a case manager, bringing them down here to the Harbor Department, if no one's going to listen to me. I'm being very honest with you. That's a solution. I have a person who worked at the Achievement House for 25 years, a City of Morro Bay resident, who would love to volunteer to do this.
I don't think the city is going to balk at any volunteer or other cost-saving or efforts to increase this. I will argue back a little bit with you in that starting in last year's budget processing, which is the budget we're in right now, over probably the last 18 months, the city has tripled, if not quadrupled, its restroom cleaning to the point we're throwing an extra almost $7,000 at it to pay for extra staff time to help achieve that. So things have been.
Results then.
It's still not adequate, obviously.
Right.
It's with the level of use that we get.
Right.
It's still not adequate. And if you were to do something like that, or some group or other person come forward with some other ideas, we'll take all comers. Okay, anything else on infrastructure, public spaces, goal 3?
No.
Okay, goal 4, review and update significant land use plans. So we did a little bit of the first one on there. That's a Q1, Q0, currently working on it. Provide input to consultants. That'll be an as required as things progress with that. Same with the next one. Nope, those are the last 2 ones. So it seems like the mission statement and whatever, and the Measure D, that's not lost on us as well. I think we're still, there's a desire there to try and get some clarification on that Measure D stuff. So working waterfront and what we talked about earlier, keeping on with the mission/policy statement. Anything else? Okay. I think that concludes us. Timelines, work program. Yep, that's all I've got on that one.
Good job, Eric.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes. So now, the final segment, declaration of future agenda items. Are there any additions to that? We have pending some items, the goals and objectives, Measure D, working waterfront, and Measure D, Back Bay Water Use Forum.
I have a question. What does that mean?
Primarily the birders, and the hunters, and what's going on back there, and kind of hold a public forum. There's been there's still a lot of controversy.
That's where it goes back to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
pretty much.
There are a lot of people who don't like hunting
Right.
the black brant.
I'm just trying to remember why we were bringing this up.
It started a couple of years ago as when the controversy had heated back up, potentially taking a position on, the board batted around the idea of having a forum and see if they want to take a position on the Back Bay hunting. And we said, no, let's just have a public forum and just get information out there to everybody so that people on both sides of the issue know physically where the boundaries are and rules and regulations, because there's a lot of unknowns that folks had, mostly from the hunter standpoint and of people coming in and what they saw as people interfering with their hunting and not knowing what the rules and regulations are around hunters, which is true. You paddle out somewhere you don't expect hunting, you wouldn't expect it. So just kind of get the information out to the public, I think, was mostly the aim of that one.
So we're talking about areas beyond the city limits or areas within the city limits? Or both?
Both.
Jeremiah?
Well, what I don't understand, so this has nothing to do about asking us for our opinion?
No. This is for us to provide an input and a forum opportunity to the general public mostly, i.e. the Back Bay Marina. When, we had the state here and we had 300 people coming up crying because they thought the Back Bay Marina was going to close.
No,
the Bayside Cafe, I'm sorry, was going to close.
Yeah.
And so we held a forum and a meeting. Now, we did make a little bit of a recommendation that we felt that the city should take an initiative and try to control both lease sites. But in this case, it's mostly a public forum.
And I was questioning the hunting
I understand.
part.
So anyway,
we would not be making a decision on one way or another. The hunting is outside our
it is
purview.
outside the city limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
So it would just be using a Harbor Advisory Board meeting to use as a forum, the whole meeting, or just on that one issue?
Correct, to hold an informational forum, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, not as a decision-making.
Are you wondering if there would be other agenda items on that meeting, or if we would just come for that?
Well, it's just we have a lot of agenda items, that we need to go through the year, and to take a meeting and just the whole meeting just be a forum about this. I can see it would have to be like a special.
It'd be a special.
To be honest with you, that's kind of one of the reasons that sat there for a long time on that list, because there's a lot of other higher priorities we have. I mean, we do, future agenda items are dealt with on a as available and priority basis as well. Council goals and objectives obviously being top of the list of our things to do. There's other things I bring forward. There's other things we bring forward as a board that you want to look at. And so we've got to weigh all those and look at it as a whole and take care of the business that needs to get taken care of and get the other stuff. So it's sat there for a while.
I just forgot what it meant.
Yeah.
Well, it just brings up someone was asking me if the Harbor Advisory Board would be a good place to have a forum on the wind energy situation, and have those guys come and speak. And I said, well, that's kind of what we do. But then again, just like we were just talking about, having a whole meeting for that, so I guess it would have to be a special meeting.
Or it could be,
Well, the county had a wind energy meeting at their Board of Supervisors last Tuesday, if you were interested in going. And, I think that this is more of a citywide opportunity than the Harbor Advisory Board.
we also have the paid parking on the Embarcadero and adjacent vicinities. Explore the benefits of becoming a harbor or port district. So in addition to those items, do we have any additional suggestions?
Not for me.
Okay. Well,
Announcement, he forgot.
oh, yes, Dana.
Yeah, I just remembered, Bill actually reminded me, this is an announcement, didn't make it earlier on, but Central Coast Maritime Museum Association is having their annual meeting Tuesday, May 9th at the Inn of Morro Bay. It's for their members and also interested members of the public. So that's at 6:30 in the Morro Bay Room at the Inn at Morro Bay. There'll be a 5:30 social in the bar lounge beforehand also.
Okay. So with our final announcement, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Don't forget to fill out your